Following my father's recent passing, I made the decision to split the $5 million inheritance between my mother and myself. This was a bittersweet resolution that came shortly after his funeral, as I was going through the inheritance documents. Then, Robert, without any right to comment, casually said, "Emma, don't be greedy." His next words left me in utter disbelief. "Finally, I can quit my job. I owe it all to that doddering old man." I was shocked. "Are you talking about my father?" I asked, unable to mask my outrage. Robert ignored my reaction, and he and my mother-in-law eagerly began making plans to buy a new car and go on a shopping spree. The audacity of their behavior while I was still grieving was too much. Here I was, struggling with the loss of my father, buried in household duties, and now they were mocking the man who had just passed. The thought of continuing to live with Robert and my mother-in-law suddenly became unbearable. With great effort, I forced a smile and said, "Sure, spend the money however you want. My name is Emma Watson, and I'm a 40-year-old housewife who works alongside my husband. I was raised as an only child by parents who were both doctors and ran a highly regarded clinic in our town. They showered me with love, and even though I chose a career in pharmacology over medicine, they supported my decision. Our family's world was turned upside down 8 years ago when my mother passed away in an accident, leaving my father and me devastated. During those dark days, Robert, then my boyfriend, became my rock. We met through a mutual friend, and 3 years after my mother's death, Robert proposed. Robert worked in the food and beverage industry. Despite earning less than I did, I believed our love would carry us through anything. My father was thrilled when I told him about the engagement. "I've seen how Robert has supported you, Emma. Thank you. Please, continue taking care of her," he said. Robert stood tall and promised, "I will make her happy." I felt a surge of happiness beside him, certain that we had a bright future ahead. However, things took an unexpected turn when we visited Robert's family to announce our engagement. His mother, a heavily made-up divorcee, looked me over with a critical eye. "Marriage? Huh, you're Robert's choice? Isn't she a bit plain for you, and older, too? Wouldn't a younger woman be a better fit?" Her words felt like a bucket of cold water. Robert's reply caught me off guard. When his mother questioned whether a younger, prettier girl would be more suited for him, he responded, "Mom, Emma works at Gold Pharmaceuticals, and her father is a doctor with his own practice." He highlighted the financial aspects of my background rather than my personal qualities, and suddenly his mother's demeanor shifted. "Oh Robert, you should have mentioned these things sooner. I'm happy to approve of the marriage. Nice to meet you, Emma, and thank you." With his mother's approval, Robert was overjoyed, but despite the smooth progress toward our marriage, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. When we prepared to officially register our marriage, my father, not only a doctor but also a property developer, gifted us an apartment in Philadelphia, USA. I eagerly shared the news with Robert. "Dad has given us this apartment as a wedding gift. It's our new home. Let's live here happily and peacefully together." Robert's face lit up with happiness, and I thought this was the beginning of our life together. But the reality of marriage soon unveiled some unsettling truths. Robert, who had lived with his parents until our marriage, was shockingly unable to handle even basic household tasks. He couldn't cook, didn't know how to use the washing machine, and showed no interest in learning. His messy habits, leaving garbage around and never cleaning up, only added to my frustration. In our first year of marriage, I took on all the household duties. It was supposed to be our honeymoon phase, but balancing work and home life on my own wore me down. By our second year, I had reached my breaking point and decided we needed to have a serious conversation about sharing the load. I gathered the courage to express my dissatisfaction, hoping for some understanding, but to my surprise, Robert responded dismissively. "I'm tired from work too," he said. "You're better at chores than I am. It's better if you just handle them." I was left speechless. From that moment on, Robert avoided helping with anything, leaving me to handle everything on my own. As the years passed, I continued to bear the brunt of the household duties. Robert's mother added another layer of stress. She had high expectations, and Robert never showed much interest in celebrating holidays. So, for Mother's Day, I decided to send her a thoughtful gift, a high-quality scarf and a bouquet of carnations. But when she called to thank me, she criticized the scarf for not being a luxury brand. I tried to explain its quality, but she brushed me off, saying only luxury gifts would do. Feeling bewildered, I told Robert about the incident, hoping he'd support me. Instead, his response was a shrug. "It's just a scarf, just do what she wants." To avoid further conflict, we started giving her cash, as she demanded. By our 6th year of marriage, Robert's mother began visiting us more often, frequently asking for money. Robert, without hesitation, always handed it over, smiling. Despite having a job, Robert's income was modest, and managing our finances became a struggle. In desperation, I began dipping into our savings and cutting living expenses. The news of my father's illness hit me like a ton of bricks, and my days quickly became a blur balancing work, managing the household, and making frequent trips to the hospital. My job offered some flexibility, but the domestic responsibilities still fell squarely on my shoulders. When I told Robert I'd be caring for my father during this difficult time, his reaction was cold and indifferent. There was no offer of support, just a dispassionate, "Please do your best." He visited my father once, and that was it. I was left to shoulder everything, from caring for my father to managing the household, with little energy or time to spare for Robert. If I did find a moment of respite, it was only natural that I wanted to dedicate it to my father, not to Robert's needs. One day, while my father lay weak and frail in his hospital bed, he asked me a question that caught me completely off guard. "How is your marriage with Robert going, Emma?" His words hung in the air as I thought about Robert's indifference and his mother's demanding behavior. I struggled to find the right words. My hesitation must have been obvious, and my father, ever the caring presence, gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "Emma, you don't have to endure this. Think about your happiness. Don't worry, you won't face hardship after I'm gone." His words broke me, and I wept as he held my hand, offering a silent but comforting presence. Months later, my father passed away peacefully. Amid the grief, I threw myself into making funeral arrangements. Robert, however, seemed as detached as ever, offering no help. Even though I was overwhelmed, I had little time to focus on his lack of support. Many people came to pay their respects, and even Robert and his mother, despite their usual indifference, attended the funeral. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer about my father's inheritance. When I met with him, I learned that my father had amassed an estate worth over $5 million after taxes, thanks to his success as a doctor and his investments in real estate. I was stunned, both by the size of the inheritance and the responsibility of managing such a large sum. As I left the meeting, I felt a mix of gratitude and anxiety about the future. At home, I spread the documents from the lawyer across the desk. The weight of it all overwhelmed me, and I fell asleep on the sofa, exhausted. When I woke up, I could hear Robert and his mother chatting and laughing as if they had no care in the world. Their voices, so disconnected from the gravity of the situation, left me feeling more isolated than ever. I was jolted awake when Robert appeared with a huge smile, holding the inheritance papers in his hands. "Well done, Emma," he said, his voice overly cheerful. I was confused. "What are you doing with those?" I asked, angry and shocked that he had gone through the papers without asking. My mother-in-law, unfazed by my distress, chimed in. "$5 million, can you believe it? Now we're set for life." Her words stung, as if she felt entitled to something that wasn't hers. Then Robert turned serious. "About that $5 million, he said, "I've decided it will be split between me and Mom." His words hit me like a slap in the face. I was still reeling from my father's death, and here they were, already planning to take what wasn't theirs. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice shaking with disbelief, but Robert's response was casual, even mocking. "I can finally quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man for all of this." "Are you talking about my father?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Let's just get the inheritance process moving, and transfer the money to our joint account," Robert continued, ignoring my shock, as he and his mother excitedly discussed shopping sprees and buying a new car. My frustration boiled over. I was the one left managing everything at home, and now they were insulting my father. Suppressing my fury, I forced a smile. "Sure, spend it however you like," I said, barely holding it together. My mother-in-law, satisfied with my response, said cheerfully, "That's the spirit, Emma. Now work hard and keep earning. We don't want to see our savings decrease." After the funeral, Robert and his mother began living like royalty. Robert quit his job almost immediately, and his mother moved in with us, staying there constantly. They spent their days shopping for luxury brands and dining at expensive restaurants, making their outings sound like something from a celebrity magazine. Meanwhile, I continued to manage the household, doing all the chores and taking care of everything. Robert seemed to think the inheritance would be available at once, and started draining our joint account without hesitation. My savings of $140,000 quickly evaporated. When I confronted him, he laughed it off. "What are you worried about? The inheritance is coming soon." And we'll be fine. A month later, Robert and his mother took a vacation to Hawaii. I wasn't invited. They left without a second thought, leaving me behind in the house. After watching them leave, I decided it was time to take control. A week later, as I was enjoying a quiet day at home, I heard a loud knock on the door. I checked the intercom and saw Robert and his mother standing there, dressed in Hawaiian shirts, looking confused. "Why won't the door open?" Robert shouted. I calmly responded through the intercom. "I changed the locks. I'll meet you at the cafe. Please go ahead. I'll join you shortly." After a brief shouting match, they finally left for the cafe. Once I was sure they were gone, I followed them. When I arrived, Robert and his mother were already there, looking furious. "Did you change the locks? Give us the new keys right now," Robert demanded. "No," I replied coolly, pulling out a divorce petition from my bag. "You both need to leave the house." Their faces turned pale with shock. Robert stammered, "Divorce? You're serious?" "I am," I said firmly. "You've been living off me and my father's generosity for too long. It's time for this to end." Robert and his mother were in a state of panic. I turned to Robert. "With all the money you've been spending, do you really think your finances are in good shape?" "What money?" Robert shot back. Almost I expected they would say something, discussing their outings as if they were celebrities, detached from the reality of our situation. Meanwhile, I was left to handle all the household duties, like a live-in maid. Robert seemed to think my father's inheritance would be readily available and began withdrawing money recklessly from our joint account. My savings of $140,000 quickly dwindled. When I confronted them about their excessive spending, Robert just laughed it off. "What are you worried about? Isn't $5 million coming soon? This kind of spending is nothing," he said. Despite my warnings and protests, Robert ignored my concerns. A month later, Robert and my mother-in-law abruptly left for a vacation in Hawaii. I wasn't invited and found myself alone at home. Once they were gone, I knew it was time to take a stand. About a week later, while enjoying a quiet day at home, I was startled by a loud knock on the door. Peering through the intercom, I saw Robert and my mother-in-law standing there, dressed in Hawaiian shirts and looking puzzled. "What do you want?" I asked calmly, but with coldness in my tone. Fuming, Robert snapped. "What do you mean? Why won't the door open?" With confidence, I replied through the intercom. "I changed the locks, so of course, it won't open. Let's talk this over at the nearby cafe. You go ahead, and I'll join you shortly." After some shouting and frustration, they realized their efforts were futile and headed to the cafe. Once I was sure they had left, I followed them. Upon arrival, I found Robert and his mother already there, clearly furious. "Hey, what's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now," Robert demanded. "There's no need to give you the keys. You both need to leave that house," I said calmly. Facing Robert, I pulled a divorce petition from my bag. "Divorce? Are you serious?" Robert was stunned. His mother, equally shocked, asked, "Emma, why has it come to this?" Their disbelief mirrored my own earlier frustration, but I remained resolute. Determined to reclaim my life from their selfishness and disrespect, I addressed them both, who were now visibly rattled. "Are you sure your finances are okay with the way you've been spending?" "What money? Of course, it's fine," Robert retorted fiercely, almost spitting as he spoke. "Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $90,000 in our joint account. Let me show you." He pulled out his smartphone and opened the banking app. His expression shifted instantly. "What's this? Why is the money gone? It was there just the other day." Hearing Robert's shock, his mother checked her phone, her face clouded with confusion. I decided it was time to reveal the truth while they were still trying to make sense of things. "Of course, it's gone. I'm divorcing you, so I moved the $90,000 to my account as part of the property division." "What do you mean?" Robert's face twisted in anger, but then he smirked as if a thought had struck him. "Fine, I'll divorce you, then transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split in half in a divorce, right?" "You're misunderstanding," I replied calmly. "Did you not know that the inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage, doesn't count toward property division?" Silence fell as the realization hit them both. Robert and his mother's faces changed dramatically. Perhaps they genuinely believed they were entitled to part of my inheritance. I could only sigh at their ignorance. "No, that can't be true. That's impossible." His mother's face turned red with a mix of denial and anger. "Please, check for yourself," I said, a hint of mockery in my voice. Robert began frantically searching on his smartphone. It says here, property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property, therefore, it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses. What? His mother looked at the screen in shock. Robert turned to me, desperation in his eyes. Emma, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me? I shook my head, resolute. What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you both treated me. I'm divorcing you, and I'll go to court if necessary. My voice was firm, unwavering. Robert and his mother, stunned by a side of me they'd never seen before, shrank back in fear. Their whispers were barely audible as they struggled to grasp the situation.